Alright guys, today we are going to be reacting to the Wiesel track vehicle firepower for paratroopers. We're going to do a two-part of this video. It's a little bit long, it's almost 15 minutes long, but hopefully we're going to get through it. Thank you so much for a lot of these recommendations. These are great videos. Let's jump in and see what's going on.
It's small, agile, fast, and a real powerhouse. On the battlefield, the Wiesel is a genuine multi-talent.
Wiesel.
For a paratrooper, the combat value is extremely high because the Wiesel brings the firepower we need up front.
At first sight, this small tracked vehicle bears more resemblance to a toy tank.
Damn.
Its gun, however, is fast and accurate.
The 20mm cannon has an extremely long range. We can use it to engage targets armored with up to 30mm thick steel.
It was specially developed in the 1970s for Germany's Bundeswehr paratroopers. With the two-man crew, the Wiesel is battle-ready and is specially suited to any terrain thanks to its compact size.
Like a go-kart over the ground, very agile, very quick to react, fun to drive.
Originally conceived as a special weapon for paratroopers, the Wiesel has demonstrated its versatility over the years. The Luftwaffe deploys the vehicle under the name of Ocelot as a platform for firing Stinger surface-to-air missiles at enemy helicopters and jets. No matter where paratroopers are dropped, the Wiesel's small size means it can go almost anywhere with them, wherever they need it. Even on evacuation missions in the narrow alleys of big cities, the mini-tank is there.
Other nations are really envious of this vehicle because there's nothing like it anywhere in the world.
I haven't seen anything like that, it's true. I haven't. Look how fast that thing goes. Wow.
The Wildflecken military training ground near Fulda, on the state border between Hesse and Bavaria. Here, the Bundeswehr operates a training area of more than 7 hectares. On this hilly terrain, live ammunition and explosives are used. The perfect training terrain for the Bundeswehr's heavy airborne units, such as the 7th Company of the 31st Paratroopers Regiment from Seedorf in Lower Saxony. They're receiving their final orders for their planned maneuver. Live ammunition target shooting with the Wiesel armored weapons carrier. This also included the deployment of heavy mortar guns. While some paratroopers unpack the mortar shells and fit the fuses, the Wiesel crews move into their starting positions. Working in the Wiesel is complex and multifaceted.
Driving the vehicle, listening into the 2 radio circuits. The commander also has to lead other vehicles. Operating the weapons system, that's a lot to do for one man on his own.
The Wiesel 1MK, which stands for Maschinenkanone or autocannon, only has space for 2 soldiers. A commander who is simultaneously the gunner and the driver. The Wiesel 1MK has been deployed by the Bundeswehr since 1990. It was originally developed for the paratrooper regiments. They were to be given added mobility and more firepower by these lightly armored tracked vehicles. For this purpose, one of the things the engineers equipped the Wiesel with was a low-maintenance autocannon that was both reliable and powerful.
And quick.
Other major features are its compact size and extreme maneuverability, even on difficult terrain.
Damn, wow, so fast, right?
This enables it to give the infantry effective fire support almost anywhere. The Wiesel MK is armed with a 20mm caliber autocannon. It's capable of firing blast, splinter, and anti-tank ammunition, and has a range of up to 2,000 meters. Rate of fire, up to 1,030 shots per minute.
That's a lot.
Its passive protection equipment also includes a smoke grenade launcher. To prepare the deployment of the Wiesel crews in the exercise scenario, the paratroopers' small artillery is now called for. They're equipped with 120mm caliber rapid response heavy mortar guns. In a matter of minutes, the mobile launchers have been set up and aligned. Their range lies between 450 and 6,350 meters. With its high arcing trajectory, the mortar can attack targets behind defenses or natural cover, like a ridge of hills. The explosive ammunition used against infantry and lightly armored targets is fatal within a radius of 50 meters. Besides this, flares, smoke shells, and infrared illumination rounds can also be fired. Maximum firing rate, 15 grenades per minute.
You should have said that, man. That's kind of scary, I'm not gonna lie. Scary, scary, scary stuff.
After the mortar barrage, the Wiesels speed off.
The Wiesel is used mainly to support the paratroopers when they attack, in order to engage with soft or semi-hard targets, as we call them. By that we mean enemy infantry and lightly or medium armored vehicles. On top of that, it can also be deployed against armored targets.
In the more than 3 decades of its Bundeswehr deployment, the Wiesel 1 has been repeatedly modernized. Meanwhile, most of them have fire control computers, laser rangefinders, the latest optics, and thermal imaging devices. This gives the crews full night combat capability. This equipment is secret and can therefore not be filmed. Yet despite all these innovations, its outward appearance has scarcely changed.
Its compact size means the Wiesel can move across this terrain undetected and hide under smaller pieces of cover. This way it doesn't present much of a target for the enemy.
And is consequently a much greater danger for any adversary.
It's not
its
a tank.
autocannon was developed in Germany in the 1960s. It's easy to operate and was designed to be disassembled for cleaning or maintenance without the use of any tools. The gun can not only destroy armored vehicles, it's also very effective against low-flying aircraft and helicopters. And it can fire all NATO ammunition of the standard 20mm caliber.
Man.
Let's look back. Military leaders recognized very early that paratroopers lacked transport on the ground once they'd been dropped. This deficit was seen in the Second World War and still hadn't been addressed later for the paratroopers of the still young Bundeswehr.
Even when supplies were dropped, they had to be retrieved and brought under cover manually, sometimes even under the threat from the enemy. So it was something that needed thinking about. Was there any way of equipping the paratroopers with transport vehicles?
For this reason, in 1965, the Bundeswehr ordered 50 Kraftkarren quads, known as Kakas, from the company Zweirad Union. Airborne troops were to test whether these simple quads were also suitable for military deployment. Zweirad Union had actually developed the vehicle in the early 1960s for use in forestry and agriculture. But in those fields, it hadn't sold well at all.
So RPG,
the paratroopers,
right?
on the other hand, were very interested. After a few modifications and improvements, the Bundeswehr purchased a total of 862 vehicles from 1971 onwards. However, until they were decommissioned in the 1990s, they remained a stopgap. Despite the energetic name, they were simply too small and were lacking in engine power.
Not only that, too exposed, too. You're way, way, way exposed, man. You look at that. You're easy target. Way. I know the idea was there, but you are way too much of an easy target. I'm sorry.
2-cylinder BMW Boxer engines only managed 26 horsepower, a serious deficit on heavy terrain, where the Kaka often got bogged down. This forced the Bundeswehr to take action.
In the 70s, they demanded tracked vehicles with very good cross-country mobility, the capability of carrying more equipment, and of deploying weapons. That wasn't possible with the Kaka because it was unprotected.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Furthermore, the Kaka's design and exposed seats made it unsuitable for rapid cross-country driving under intense enemy fire. Consequently, it didn't have the slightest chance of competing with the tracked vehicles of that time. Back to the military training ground in Wildflecken and the Seedorf paratroopers. Mobile ammunition troops supply the Wiesel in combat situations. The autocannon ammunition boxes are located on the side of the weapon, outside the sheet steel casing. The left-hand container holds a maximum of 60 armored piercing shells, the so-called hardcore ammunition. Up to 100 explosive and splinter projectiles can be stored on the other side. Both types of ammunition are connected to the autocannon by a so-called two-belt feed system. This makes it possible to switch from one ammunition type to the other to engage different kinds of targets.
For us, it's the perfect vehicle for supporting the paratroopers. I like working on the Wiesel. It's something I really enjoy doing, but you should never forget that it's still a weapon.
For the paratroopers on the
I was about to say, like, it's nice and movable. You can just do backflip with it, but it's still a weapon.
ground on foot, after their drop, the Wiesel is pure firepower. But for anti-tank units, its light armor can quickly make it an easy target.
In my view, it doesn't have many weaknesses, though one could argue that it doesn't offer the same protection as modern battle tanks. However, the Wiesel is deployed where paratroopers are deployed. They fight on foot, so have very little protection anyway. But it can follow us as a support vehicle and can even be deployed in the forest. For this, its great strengths are its speed, agility, and its high firepower in the forest and in urban combat, especially with its 20mm high explosive projectiles.
The tactics are straightforward. The Wiesel crews look for a protected position, take aim, open fire, and then immediately move to another position. This makes their discovery more difficult. The autocannon is located in the weapon carrier's one-man turret.
That's wow. You're inside that bunker, well, quote unquote bunker. I cannot imagine how your body will look after that. You'd be shredded to pieces.
Its swivel range, 110 degrees horizontally, -10 to +45 degrees vertically.
Shredded to pieces.
After the exercise, our speedy Predator returns to its temporary base. It's time for the so-called technical service. This demonstrates another of the vehicle's great strengths. The Wiesel is simply designed and extremely low maintenance. Almost everything can be assembled, repaired, and replaced in the field by hand using standard tools. Unloading the 20mm autocannon. Here, with its blue exercise and yellow high-explosive incendiary ammunition, takes no more than a few seconds. Should the engine or the gearbox malfunction, the entire engine block and gearbox can be replaced in only 10 minutes.
Wow, really?
To replace the gun barrel, a quick turn is all that's needed.
So Germany go from World War II, let's build these big, bulky, strong kind of tanks to, okay, let's just go back, let's just be efficient. I think that's a good way to go. Because this time in this modern warfare, you need speed. You need a lot of speed. Basically what we are seeing in Ukraine, a lot of these bulky tanks, they're an easy target. They're easy targets. When it comes down to drones, easy targets.
In the late 60s, parallel to procuring the Kaka, the Bundeswehr leadership knew full well that a specially developed vehicle for the paratroopers was needed quickly. At the height of the Cold War, military strategists assumed they would have to defend a massive tank attack from the Warsaw Pact armies. Because when it came to numbers of battle tanks and infantry fighting vehicles in Central Europe, the Eastern Bloc was far superior to NATO.
Wow, I didn't know that.
The army therefore focused everything on having the capability to stop such an onslaught, and consequently formed powerful mobile units, especially to combat tanks. However, to do this effectively, the Bundeswehr's paratroopers needed a vehicle which, just like them, could be transported quickly by air into the combat zone.
And so, quite logically, the demand was made to create a weapons carrier of up to 3 metric tons that could fit into a CH-53, the then standard transport helicopter, 2 at a time, or up to 4 or 5 at a time in a Transall, which could also take off and land in the field.
Also involved in developing and constructing the Wiesel was the long-established German company Porsche, which beat 4 other applicants to the contract.
Here it's important to know that Porsche, which ultimately is only really known as a German car manufacturer, had been strongly involved in the field of tank technology and development since the 1930s. And right up to the 19...
Yeah, why not? Why not? That's a great experience to just expand your business. Why not?
80s, Porsche had developed these vehicles, the Wiesel included, in competition with other companies.
As early as the mid-1970s, Porsche conducted initial driving trials with a prototype of the future weapons carrier on a testing area. From 1977, these tracked vehicles, though relatively small in comparison to tanks, also had to prove they were fit for use over heavy terrain. For this purpose, Porsche provided 6 test vehicles.
The problems in the test driving phase were, of course, that the vehicle had a higher center of gravity and was a bit wobbly or whatever. But the problems were only serious when it was traveling downhill and had to brake hard. Then it could happen that the vehicle tipped forward.
Besides the test driving, the main focus from the beginning had been on the transportability of the Wiesel by air. As it was planned...
Yeah, that's weird. Even if you go to the other side... Thank you, baby. Even if you do go to this... Thank you. Even if you go downhill, it will tip over, right? But if you go uphill, it will tip to the other side, right? So you have to make sure that the center of gravity, like he said, like, has to be in the middle. Or even if it goes up, somehow that the weight would shift to the front, and that way it will not flip over.
To drop the future weapons carrier by parachute, initial test drops were carried out from only a few meters using cranes. This
man, I thought
actually
it
went well.
Was gonna
However, that was to change later when the first drops from transport planes were attempted. In comparison, the first loading trials with the CH-53 heavy lift helicopter, which is still in Bundeswehr service today, went ahead quickly and smoothly.
Oh, look at
The Wiesel could simply drive up the rear ramp into the hold. The space available in the CH-53 is roughly the same as in a standard freight container. At this point, the Wiesel 1 is between 3.31 and 3.55 meters long. Its width is only 1 meter 82, while the height varies between 1 meter 83 and 1 meter 90. Maximum weight is 3 tons with an autocannon or TOW guided missiles, and 3.3 tons as a reconnaissance vehicle. Even during the initial test flights, one thing became very clear: the incredible dynamism of the Wiesel in comparison to its predecessor, the Kaka Kraftkarren quad. Once the driver had carefully maneuvered the Wiesel out of the hold, the Kaka had no chance at all of following the more robust and significantly more powerfully motorized Wiesel in the field. The advantages of the Wiesel's design mix were also more than obvious in comparisons with the Bundeswehr's other wheeled vehicles in the 1970s. Its low weight, powerful drive, and rubber band track, which was still used at the time, enabled the Wiesel to be maneuvered effortlessly over muddy and uneven terrain.
Ooh. There
the
you go.
VW liquid-cooled 5-cylinder diesel engine with an exhaust gas turbocharger generates an output of 87 horsepower. It has 3 forward gears and 1 reverse. The chassis consists of a track roller, support roller, and a deflection roller. On the road, the Wiesel 1 can reach speeds of up to 80 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
Off-road, it's an impressive 50 kilometers an hour. Fuel tank volume is 80 liters. Its range is 290 kilometers.
I think the Wiesel can do it. I think the Wiesel can do it. I think this will be a very, it's a good technology against, it's just, again, you have to test these, right? I need to see some videos of Ukraine, testing some of these kind of technology. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's important to have some feedback on this. But I think they got it. If it is an anti-missile, If you see that drone just flying around, just throw a couple missiles. That sounds easier said than done, right? But I think it's a good way to just go back, because it's, man, I'm telling you, I don't know if you guys seen some of those videos. Man, it's just scary when you see some of these drones just flying around and you don't know where they are. Like, they just scary, very scary. And I think something like this, compared to those big tanks, it's much better in the long run.
Road and 200 in the field. Installing a commercially available diesel engine practically off the peg immediately paid off in two ways.
The advantage of a diesel is the high torque, and the performance under continuous use is higher. Efficiency is much higher than a gasoline engine. And there's an enormous additional problem we have with the gas, of course. Under fire, the vehicles are at risk much more quickly. And even when transported in aircraft, gasoline engines pose a much greater safety hazard than diesels.
The first test flights with the German Air Force's Transall C-160 transport aircraft also went very much according to plan. A maximum of 4 Wiesels could be lashed inside the belly of the aircraft, at that time the Bundeswehr's flying beast of burden. But it wasn't the weight that was decisive for this, but the available space in the hold. From a weight aspect, the Transall's maximum load of 16 tons would even have enabled 5 Wiesels to be transported.
Oh, much easier.
However, dropping the vehicles with cargo parachutes, as originally planned by the Bundeswehr leadership, was a more sobering experience.
I don't know
During
about
the
that.
tests at the Airborne Operations Base in Altenstadt, the Wiesels repeatedly hit the ground far too hard.
Yeah.
4 vehicles were damaged, despite being lashed inside a special cage and cushioned with cardboard.
Wow.
As the dropping option gradually lost significance for the Bundeswehr strategists, the maneuver was finally abandoned altogether. Otherwise, the idea of being able to transport the Wiesel quickly in large numbers was a complete success. The one sacrifice made to achieve this, however, was the weaker armor.
This resulted in minimal ballistic protection. From handguns, machine guns, smaller calibers. This wasn't done to expose the crews to danger, of course, but simply because anything else just wasn't technically possible.
In contrast, the Bundeswehr testers were more than satisfied with the already tried and tested 20mm autocannon. Right from the start, it achieved excellent results against airborne and ground targets, as did the TOW anti-tank guided missiles, which had been introduced by the U.S. Army in the early 1970s. Originally, engineers had planned an enclosed gun turret, but this idea couldn't be put into practice.
The consequence of this would have been to restrict the maximum height to 1.62 meters or 1.65 meters for those inside, and that was totally unrealistic. Paratroopers of normal height simply could not have been accommodated.
Otherwise, in terms of original requirements and overall design, not much changed. After the trials with troops were successful, the way for the Wiesel's deployment was actually clear. At the beginning of 1978, the Federal Office for Defense Technology and Procurement, BWB for short, and Porsche started preparations for series production. A year later, however, the project was surprisingly canceled.
Why? Why? Why, man? This is one of those things that you never understand, right? Like you will never understood why they will cancel such a great project that already has momentum. That's weird. Very weird.
There certainly was an internal debate within the Bundeswehr about whether mainly aircraft should be used to deploy airborne forces in advance. This developed into a genuine dispute as to whether we wanted such a vehicle at all, or was it simply too heavy? And then on top of all this, other expensive procurement projects like the Leopard 2.
But by the beginning of the 1980s, it became evident that a successor to the Kaka was needed urgently.
Oh, look at that.
The Airborne Weapons Carrier project was relaunched. A total of 19 companies from Germany and abroad submitted their proposals. In the end, it was once again Porsche that got the deal, and they were awarded the development contract in 1985. A year later, the weapons system and chassis, now known as the Wiesel weapons carrier, entered the test phase. The experience gained from the first tender made sure that all tests went smoothly. And at the end of 1988, right on schedule, Porsche and the BWB signed the procurement contract for 343 Wiesels, and the production phase began.
Wow.
The military training area in Altengrabo, Saxony-Anhalt. Here, soldiers from the 31st Paratrooper Regiment and the 91st Light Infantry Battalion are preparing for a joint anti-tank exercise. Both units use the Wiesel 1 TOW, which is armed with a second-generation TOW wire-guided missile. The Wiesel 1 TOW has a crew of 3 soldiers, a driver, a loader, and a gunner, who is also the commander. Final instructions are checked before they head for the firing range.
The TOW gunner, who fires on the enemy tanks, must briefly get into position and launch his missile. Then, because he's received intelligence, he has to relocate to another position, observe briefly, and take up his firing position. At this point, he's in danger again, so these different stages must always be very brief.
The Wiesel TOW is equipped with a US-made anti-tank guided missile. The missile is powered by a solid fuel rocket booster, and the warhead consists of a tandem charge weighing just under 6 kilos, with a range of up to 4,000 meters. A thermal imager and laser rangefinder makes the Wiesel fully night capable. Its additional equipment includes a 7.62 millimeter caliber MG3 machine gun and a smoke grenade launcher. The TOW-2 guided missile has been deployed since 1986. When launched, it's first catapulted out of the tube. After about 12 meters, the actual flight motor ignites. In flight, the missile is connected with the optical guidance system on the weapons carriers via 2 thin wires. It receives the control commands through these wires and is thus guided to its target by the gunner. All in all, a Wiesel can carry 7 TOW-2s. 5 in the hull, 1 fixed onto the outside of the vehicle at the rear, and 1 in the launcher tube. For a well-coordinated crew, loading only takes a few seconds, but does have to be carried out from the hatch in an exposed position. After launching the missile, the gunner only has to keep his sights trained on the target.
Supposed to see on listeners and sniper, right? And sniper can. But I think a lot of these tanks are kind of far away too, like.
Target for the missile to hit it accurately and penetrate the armor with its hollow charge warhead.
Wow.
In its TOW configuration, it does pose a serious threat to battle tanks. With conversion to the MELS guided missile system, which is currently being fitted to the Wiesel 1, will increase the combat value and be able to take on all known battle tanks in the world.
Scary stuff, man.
The TOW-2 can penetrate armor of up to 70 millimeters, but each grenade costs around 180,000 US dollars.
Damn, bro, wow. That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money. Damn, that's a lot of money, bro, for 1 bullet. Damn. Well, guys, I'm going to just react to the part 2. This is going to be part 1. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.